My name is Ryan Harper. I'm 27 years old, white, and I live in an old apartment on the western edge of Kansas City, in the part that the maps still call the revitalizing inner city. But anyone who's lived here long enough knows that's just a polite way of saying a neighborhood the city forgot about years ago. My place is a one-bedroom unit in a red brick building from the 70s. The hallway always smells of damp. The stairs creak like they're arguing with each other. The heating system rattles in winter as if it's fighting the pipes. The back balcony looks out over a potholed parking lot and an all-night self-serve car wash. It isn't pretty. It isn't magazine cozy. Nothing about it makes you think this is where a life starts over. But it's what I can afford after everything else fell apart. I work 2 jobs. During the day, I'm on the city's industrial cleaning crew, scrubbing office buildings, government halls, warehouses, and the occasional foreclosed apartment the bank just took back. In plain terms, I clean up whatever other people mess up, so the city can look decent the next morning. Nights and weekends, I take whatever handyman gigs come along. Unclogging drains, fixing doors, painting fences, replacing faucets, pressure washing garage floors, clearing flooded basements, anything that pays cash. I used to have something that felt like a career. I dropped out of architecture school in Denver, worked for a small construction firm, then started my own little civil design outfit. I wasn't rich, but I had an office, clients, a few decent projects, and the feeling I was building a life with my brain instead of just my back and hands. Then the lawsuit hit. A developer blamed us for design flaws on a housing complex, even though everyone knew the contractor had cut corners. The law doesn't care much about fairness. It cares about who runs out a fight first. I ran out first. The company folded, money dried up, reputation cracked. Friends disappeared at the same speed. I moved to Kansas City because it was cheap, anonymous, and nobody here knew who I used to be. For the last few years, my rhythm has been simple. Work, pay bills, don't hope too hard. That night started like every other bad night. Late September. It had been drizzling since afternoon, and around 10 o'clock the real storm rolled in. Not a tornado, but strong enough for the weather alerts to warn about flash flooding and scattered power outages. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of overdue bills, a cold cup of instant coffee beside them, my head throbbing from the evening shift at the logistics center. I stared at 3 sheets of paper for a long time. Electricity past due, water final notice, rent coming up. Some nights the exhaustion doesn't make you cry or get angry. It just makes you feel your life has been squeezed so small that every problem finally shrinks to one question. Will I have enough money this month? The wind outside started howling through the window gaps. Rain lashed the glass like someone throwing gravel. I stood up to check the locks. The overhead kitchen light flickered once, then steadied. And right then, the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. Then a third time, longer and more urgent. I froze in the middle of the kitchen. 10 o'clock at night. Pouring rain. This wasn't the kind of neighborhood where people knocked on neighbors' doors asking for sugar. Normal folks here texted first, the ones who didn't usually pick nights exactly like this. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. 2 women stood on the shared porch, both of them soaked, hair plastered to their faces, coats heavy with water. The shorter one, slim, blonde hair stuck to her neck, hugged her own arms against the cold. The taller one had a fuller figure, clearly plus size by any standard people like to judge by, but she stood very straight. She wore a long black coat over a dark wool dress that clung to her from the rain. Her round, soft face held dark eyes that looked both sharp and tired at the same time. What struck me most wasn't her size. It was the way she stood there, drenched and miserable, yet still carrying a cold kind of dignity. I cracked the door, keeping the chain on. Yes? The shorter woman started to speak, but the taller one touched her arm lightly and spoke first. Her voice was low, husky, controlled even though she was shivering. I'm sorry to bother you this late. Our car broke down about a mile back. Phones have no signal because of the storm. We knocked on a lot of doors, but nobody answered. She drew a breath. Could we stay here tonight? I blinked. The question was so direct. No small talk. No request to use the phone. No 5-minute shelter. Just the thing they really needed. A place to spend the night. I looked at them again, then answered on pure reflex. I only have 1 bed. The shorter woman flushed bright red, looking like she might cry from embarrassment. But the fuller-figured woman just held my gaze for a beat, then asked quietly, Do you have a lock on the door that works from the inside? That question stopped me cold. Not because it suggested anything bad about me, but because it told me they were genuinely scared, had been scared before they even knocked, and what she needed wasn't just shelter. It was the ability to control at least a little bit of safety. I slid the chain off. Come in, I said. At least get out of the rain before you both freeze in the hallway. The shorter woman let out a shaky breath like she'd just been pulled from something dangerous. The taller one stepped inside a half-beat slower, eyes still studying me carefully. I'm Sophia Langford, she said. The blonde added, I'm Ava, her sister. I closed the door. The wind was cut off instantly. I'm Ryan. None of us knew that one rainy night of shelter would be enough to turn my entire life upside down. My apartment was small enough that the moment the two women stepped inside, the whole space felt different. I pulled 2 old towels from the hall closet and handed them over. The space heater I kept in the corner rattled to life when I flipped the switch. Rain still pounded the balcony door. The living room light threw a yellowish glow over everything, making the place look exactly what it was. Tired, worn, but dry. Ava shivered so hard I thought her teeth might chatter, so I dug out 2 packets of hot chocolate mix from the back of the cupboard and made them each a mug. Sophia held hers with both hands, not drinking right away, her eyes moving quickly around the apartment the way someone does when they've learned to size up a room fast. Windows, distance to the kitchen, bedroom door, locks, landline, escape routes. Can I use your phone to call for roadside help? She asked. I picked up the receiver, listened to the deadline, then checked my cell. Landline's out. My phone has no signal either. Ava perched on the edge of the couch, legs tucked under her, lips still blue from the cold. We walked through the rain for almost 20 minutes, she said quietly. I didn't think anyone would open the door. How many houses did you try? I asked. Sophia answered for her. At least 12. None of them opened? One turned the porch light on and then turned it off again. I looked at the 2 of them, at their coats still dripping onto my floor, and felt something old and tight twist in my chest. Not pity, but a quiet anger at how easily people can walk past each other when one of them is really scared. I can pull the couch out into a bed, I said. You 2 can take the bedroom. I'll sleep out here. Sophia shook her head immediately. No, we can't take your bed. Ava started to argue, but Sophia squeezed her sister's arm once, gently. I watched them, then shrugged. Then it settled. Bedroom's yours, I sleep on the couch. No discussion. You don't even know us, Sophia said. Tonight that doesn't matter much. That answer made her quiet for a few seconds. I showed them into the only bedroom, pointed out the clean towels, the new toothbrush still in its package in the bathroom drawer, then went back to the kitchen and busied myself cleaning up like it was the most normal thing in the world to have 2 strange women sleeping in my bed. But it wasn't normal, and I knew it. That night I barely slept. Half because the couch sagged in all the wrong places. Half because my mind kept replaying the way Sophia had stood on my porch and asked, Do you have a lock on the door that works from the inside? In that low, tired voice. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the bedroom door open, very softly. I lifted my head. Sophia stood in the kitchen doorway wearing the oversized t-shirt I had left on the chair for them. The shirt hung loose on her, one shoulder slipping down, her dark hair still damp and falling against her neck. Without the heavy coat, her full figure was more obvious, but somehow the word fat people like to throw around stopped mattering. It was just the body of a woman who was exhausted. Sorry, she said softly. I didn't mean to wake you. I wasn't sleeping anyway. Because of us? I work nights cleaning. My sleep's never been great. The corner of her mouth twitched upward. I just wanted some water, she said. I'll get it for you. I poured her a glass. She took it with both hands and sat down at the little kitchen table across from me. The rain had eased off. Now there was only the quiet drip from the eaves and the steady hum of the space heater. Why did you open the door? She asked suddenly. What? You live alone. This neighborhood isn't the safest, middle of a storm. 2 strangers knocking. Sophia stared into her glass. You should have left the chain on. I thought about it for a second, then told her the truth. Because I know what it feels like to stand on the wrong side of a door like that. She looked up. I gave her the short version, how my old company had gone under, how I had slept in my truck for 3 nights in Denver after the landlord changed the locks before I could scrape together the money, how sometimes people don't need a sermon, they just need someone to open the damn door. Sophia didn't offer polite sympathy when I finished. She just said, So, you're not kind. You just remember too well. I laughed under my breath. You can call it that. For the first time that night, I saw her shoulders drop. Really drop. The next morning, the sky was strangely clear, as if the storm had never happened. I got up first, made coffee, and scrambled eggs with toast from whatever was left in the fridge. Ava came out first, hair in a ponytail, face brighter now that it was dry. Sophia came out a few minutes later, back in her wool dress from the night before, hair left loose, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. Breakfast was quieter than I expected. Ava did most of the talking. She told me they had been driving back from St. Louis to Chicago, taking a detour to visit an old classmate when the car died in the storm. I listened, nodded, asked enough questions to be polite. Sophia mostly watched, but I could feel her weighing something. When I drove them back to the broken-down car later, everything changed. The vehicle parked on the shoulder was a black BMW X7, the kind I only ever saw in hotel valet lines or outside glass office towers, not something that usually broke down in my part of town. "That's your car?" I asked. Ava gave a crooked smile. "Yeah, it's hers." I popped the hood, took a quick look, and figured the serpentine belt had snapped after hitting debris in the rain. I was still poking around when 3 more black SUVs pulled up. 2 men in long coats stepped out first. A silver-haired woman followed. All 3 looked at Sophia in a way that told me instantly the woman who had slept in my bed last night was not some random traveler. "Ms. Langford," one of the men said. I turned to Sophia. She stood very straight, face calm. Only a small breath escaped. Ava winced. "I told you they'd track us." The silver-haired woman approached, voice cool. "Your father has been waiting for your call since last night." "Father?" I looked at Sophia again, then at the perfect suits, then at the BMW, and I understood exactly whose house I had let 2 strangers into. Later, when the silver-haired woman pressed a cream-colored business card into my palm, embossed with the name Sophia Langford, Executive Director, Langford Urban Holdings, I finally realized what I had done. And the strangest part was, what stayed with me wasn't the card. It was the way Sophia, right before she climbed into the SUV, turned back and said very quietly, "Thank you for treating us like people last night, not like problems." I kept that card in my wallet, and from that moment on, my life refused to stay still anymore. 3 days later, there was a knock on my door around noon. I had just gotten off the morning cleaning shift and was still in my work shirt, half unbuttoned, when I opened it to find 2 men in dark suits standing there. Behind them, a black sedan idled at the curb like it belonged in a different zip code. For a second, I thought I had the wrong apartment. "Mr. Ryan Harper?" one of them asked. "Yeah." "Mr. Victor Langford would like to meet with you, if you're free." I had never heard the name before, but the tone made it clear this wasn't the kind of invitation you politely turn down. I went anyway, mostly out of curiosity. And because guys who swing hammers and scrub floors don't usually get to see what real money looks like when it decides to walk into your neighborhood, the car took me downtown to one of those glass hotels that smell like money the second the doors slide open. The executive lounge on the top floor had leather sofas and coffee ground fresh while you watched. My work boots looked ridiculous on the marble, but I didn't care. Victor Langford was waiting by the window. Early 60s, silver hair cut sharp, steel eyes, navy suit that fit like it had been sewn on. The watch on his wrist could probably buy the whole building I lived in. But it wasn't the money that hit you, it was the way the whole room seemed to wait for him to speak. "I heard what my daughters told me about you," he said, after the shortest handshake in history. "Which part?" I asked. "The part where you opened the door on a night when 12 other houses didn't." I sat down, still not quite believing I was there. Lila walked in from the bar area a moment later. Sophia came last. She was wearing a smoke gray midi dress and a cream jacket, hair pulled low and neat. She looked nothing like the drenched woman who had stood on my porch. Polished, in control, placed exactly where her world expected her to be. But the first thing I noticed was still those same dark eyes, deeper than anyone would guess. Victor got straight to it. He had looked into me after hearing the story. Not in a creepy way, he said, but enough to know I had dropped out of architecture school, run a small design firm that folded in a lawsuit, and now cleaned buildings and fixed whatever people paid me to fix. He also knew about the old freelance drawings I had posted on a dead portfolio site 2 years ago. "I don't hand out jobs out of gratitude, hui," he told me. "I invest in people." I almost laughed. Rich men always like to turn everything into an investment portfolio. He slid a thin folder across the table. Inside was an offer for field operations coordinator on a big neighborhood revitalization project Langford Urban Holdings was running right here in Kansas City. The role sat between the field crews, contractors, technical specs, and actual on-site infrastructure. It wasn't exactly my dream job, but it was closer to what I used to be good at than anything I was doing now. The salary made me read the number twice. "Why me?" I asked straight out. Victor didn't blink. "Because you opened the door. Because you made hot chocolate instead of calling the cops. And because those old public design notes of yours show you actually understand how people live in spaces." He tilted his head slightly. "I need someone who has both brains and character in the same place." Lila smiled like she was watching a movie. Sophia stayed quiet. She just watched me in a way I couldn't decide was hopeful or worried. I don't owe you anything, I said to Sophia, though my eyes stayed on Victor. I know, she answered softly. So this isn't some thank you gift? Victor cut in. No, it's a job. Take it or don't, your call. I should have felt insulted that they had looked me up, but the truth was I was too tired of my current life to let pride get in the way. A door had cracked open in a weird way, and I wasn't about to slam it shut. I asked for 2 days to think. Those 2 days, my head didn't rest for a minute. Taking the job meant better money, health insurance, a real path, instead of scrubbing warehouses and breathing chemicals every morning. But it also meant stepping into Sophia's world in a way I wasn't sure was safe. Because the most annoying truth was this. Ever since that night, I had been thinking about her more than I should. It wasn't just physical, though I was a man and she was a woman, with a full, soft body and a presence that didn't need to be magazine thin to turn heads. I kept remembering how she had stood on my porch soaked and shivering but still kept her voice steady. How she had asked about the inside lock like it was a quiet plea. How she hadn't tried to throw money at the situation that night. How real her thank you had sounded the next morning. In the end, I took the job. A week later, I had a new desk, a company email, site access cards, and a fresh pair of steel-toed boots that still smelled like rubber. Sophia was still Sophia Langford, but now she wasn't just the stranger who had knocked in the rain. She was part of the orbit I walked through every single day. The hardest part wasn't working near her. It was keeping that rainy night from coloring the way I saw everything she did afterward. At the office, Sophia was colder. Not cruel, not arrogant, just controlled, precise. She smiled less. She kept exactly the right distance from everyone, as if letting anyone step 1 inch closer might cost her something important. And that made me more certain than ever. The woman who had sat at my kitchen table in my oversized t-shirt was the real one. The rest of it was only armor. The new job swept me up quicker than I thought it would. The project on the south side of the city was massive. Multiple phases, multiple crews, and contractors arguing over every inch of blueprint. I was better at the actual site work than most of the managers who liked wearing clean white shirts but had never pulled a drain pipe or measured footings in the rain. So within 2 weeks, I already had a voice on the ground that people listened to. Sophia rarely came down to the site, but every time she did, the air got tighter. It wasn't because she yelled. She never raised her voice. It was because she saw everything. A steel column installed 4 millimeters off. A material report with numbers quietly changed. A pedestrian path around the redevelopment that was too steep for elderly residents with walkers. She would walk 1 loop, ask 3 sharp questions, and all 4 contractors would have to rewrite their plans. A lot of people were afraid of her. Some of them called her the fat queen behind her back. I heard it once near the crane area. I didn't think. I just grabbed the guy by the collar and shoved him hard against a steel beam. Say that again if you've got the balls, I told him. He didn't repeat it. I got a written warning for unprofessional conduct. But strangely, Sophia never mentioned it. Until one rainy afternoon, she kept me behind after an on-site meeting. You don't have to fight for me, she said. I closed the folder in my hands. I wasn't fighting. Ryan. I was just correcting a misunderstanding. Sophia looked at me for a long time. Then she sighed. You know that's the worst part? What? That you make me feel protected in places where I shouldn't need protection. That sentence hit me straight in the chest. After that afternoon, the space between us started to change. We never said anything outright, but little things gave it away. She started calling me directly instead of going through her assistant when she needed something checked on site. I learned that she drank her coffee black with no sugar, but always touched her lips to the rim first, like a small, thinking ritual. She knew I often skipped lunch when work piled up, so sometimes her assistant would accidentally leave an extra salad or sandwich on the site office table. I noticed that when she was truly stressed, she would take off the ring on her index finger and spin it slowly. She noticed I hated wearing new clothes, because every time the company issued new safety jackets, I left mine in the truck for days before putting it on. We weren't dating. We barely even touched after that first stormy night. But the less we did, the stronger the pull between us became. One late evening, I stayed behind in the site office container to fix the next day's shift schedule. The rain outside was light and the construction lights cast blurry gold streaks across the windows. You're still here? Sophia's voice came from the doorway. I have to finish this before morning. She looked at the screen, then set 2 paper coffee cups on the table. I know. You came down here just to bring coffee? Do you think I can't do pointless things sometimes too? I took the cup. Our fingers brushed for a second, both of us felt it. Sophia leaned against the opposite desk and stayed quiet for a moment before asking, "Have you ever wondered why I knocked on your door that night?" I figured because the other 12 houses didn't open. No. She shook her head slightly. I mean, why I asked that question? I didn't interrupt. Sophia looked out at the rain. After my mother died, my father basically turned our house into a business. Every dinner was strategy. Every mistake was data. I was the oldest, so I had to be solid. Ava got to be the soft one. She gave a small, bitter smile. Then a few years later, I got engaged to a man who looked perfect on paper. He loved me long enough for the doctor to tell us my chances of having children were very low because of some endocrine issues and earlier complications. Her hand tightened around the coffee cup. After that, everything in him changed, slowly, civilly, reasonably. But it changed. I watched her. I was finally understanding where the exhaustion in her eyes came from. That stormy night, I had just fought with my father, Sophia continued. He wanted me to go back to New York after finishing the contracts here and try again with my ex. Because according to him, a woman like me shouldn't live an unstable life. She frowned, smiling without humor. The car broke down in the storm. Ava was panicking. I stood at your door and realized if you said no, I didn't know where else to knock without feeling like I was truly left outside the world. I set my cup down. And that's why you asked if the door could be locked from the inside. For the first time in a long time, she didn't dodge. Yeah. The silence between us grew heavy. Rain tapped lightly on the container roof. Then Sophia asked, "If you had known who I was that night, would you still have opened the door?" I answered without hesitation. Yes. She looked at me like she hated how much she believed me. "You don't know what you're getting into," she whispered. "I do," I said slowly, because the first thing I saw that night wasn't your status. It was a woman trying to keep her sister from being more scared than she already was. Her eyes darkened. Not cold, but like they were about to soften. "Don't look at me like that, Ryan." "Like what?" "Like you make me forget I'm supposed to keep my distance." I let out a quiet laugh. "Maybe it's already too late." Sophia didn't laugh. She just looked at me. For a very long time. And in that moment, I understood the real price of being close to her. It wasn't the money difference. It wasn't what people outside would say. It was that a woman like Sophia had lived by control for so long that if she ever really fell for someone, the fall would be very deep. Everything exploded not long after that. Victor Langford came to Kansas City. He didn't make a scene. Powerful men rarely shout. They just walk into a room with a polite smile and make the whole place feel like it already belongs to them. He showed up on site one Monday morning. Black car, security detail, shoes that didn't pick up any mud even though he stepped through it. I was checking drainage trenches when I saw Sophia standing next to him, back straighter than usual. Ava wasn't there. Their private talk happened inside the site office trailer, but the voices carried just enough for me to catch fragments as I walked past. Enough already. I'm not going back to that. A man who cleans construction sites is not your future. He's not the problem, Father. You are, turning everything into one. I stopped mid-step. I didn't go in. I didn't walk away either. Just enough to know I had heard the worst part. That afternoon, Sophia avoided looking at me. Only at night did she text, "You still on site?" I was locking up the supply warehouse, still here. She appeared 5 minutes later, no blazer, just a white dress shirt and black slacks, hair down, face tired in the way that told me she had been fighting all day. "My father wants me back in New York next month," she said right away. I leaned against the metal shelving and stayed quiet. "He says I've lost focus." Sophia gave a dry laugh. "Meaning I've become too human because of you." "I guess he doesn't like me being around. He sees you as proof I'm sabotaging a perfectly good structure." I stared at her. "And you?" The question made her silent. Then she asked, voice low, "If I told you I don't know who I am when I'm near you, what would you think?" "I'd think you finally stopped pretending." Sophia closed her eyes and let out a long breath. "Ryan, I don't want to turn you into a temporary rebellion against my father." "I'm not a rebellion." "I know. No, you say that, but you're still trying to push me away so it hurts less if you leave." Her eyes opened fast. I had hit the mark. She choked, then said the thing she had probably been most afraid to admit. "I'm scared that if I choose you, you'll end up paying a price that's too high." I stepped closer, not fast, not pushing. "Listen," I said, "I'm not promising I'll make your father happy, or the board, or the rumors outside. But I know one thing. I won't let you keep living like you're an investment that has to justify its returns." Her lips trembled. Why do you always say exactly what I'm weakest against? Because maybe I see it. That's the most dangerous thing about you. I gave a small smile. I thought it was the way I use bleach without gloves. She laughed then, one short, sad but real sound. Then Sophia did the one thing I never expected. She closed the last gap, placed her hand on my dusty workshirt chest and whispered, "If I hadn't knocked on your door that night, do you think your life would still be the same?" I looked at her, then at her hand resting over my heart. No. So, do you regret it? I regret not asking you to stay sooner. Tears rose in her eyes. They didn't fall. They just pooled at the lashes, making her eyes shine under the warehouse lights. Ryan, yeah? That night I asked, could we stay here tonight? She smiled faintly. I wasn't only asking about your apartment. I understood immediately. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. What were you asking then? Sophia swallowed. Whether there was anywhere I could exist without having to shrink myself to fit someone else's frame. I lifted my hand and touched her cheek. Slow. Sure. You can stay here, I said. As long as you want. Our first kiss happened right there in the supply warehouse. Smell of damp wood and concrete dust around us, yellow work lights hanging low. Nothing romantic by any standard her world had taught her to expect. But it was real. And for two people like us, that was enough. After that, things didn't get easier right away. Sophia still had to face her father, still had to face the board, still had people whispering behind her back that she had slipped in standards. I was still the guy who worked with his hands, clothes covered in dirt, college degree unfinished. But for the first time, she wasn't facing it alone anymore. 3 weeks later, she refused to move to New York. She refused to reconnect with the ex her father had quietly arranged. She restructured her role, kept the Kansas City project, and created a separate community development arm so she could make her own decisions. Victor was so angry the two of them barely spoke for a while. And me? I stayed. Not like some hero. Just like a man who finally knew exactly where he wanted to be. Sophia started coming to my apartment more often. First it was Friday nights after heavy meetings. Then a few weeknights too, then a jacket she left on the chair. A blue-gray mug she used only for herself. A toothbrush. A box of expensive oatmeal I would never have bought. But she said I needed to eat breakfast like a real person. One early winter evening we sat at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had started, eating takeout noodles after a long day. Rain tapped lightly on the glass, a gentler echo of that first storm. Sophia looked around the apartment and said, "You know, this place is still old, walls still ugly, kitchen light still flickers. I know. But this is the first place in years where I don't feel like I have to prepare an apology before I walk in." I set my chopsticks down, looked at her, for a long time. "Then stay," she smiled. "You say that so easily. I said it from the beginning. The difference is this time you're hearing it differently." Sophia was quiet for a second, then asked, half joking, half serious, "What if I really moved in?" "I'd have to buy a bigger bed. And I'd have to learn how to live with a woman who wipes her hands on an expensive wool sweater after mixing salad." She laughed. "I only did that once. And I haven't forgotten." She touched my hand, eyes softening completely. "Ryan," she said quietly, "I think that night I wasn't just knocking for shelter from the storm. I know. I think part of me wanted to see if there was still someone in the world who would open the door without knowing how much I was worth." I squeezed her hand. "Now you know." If anyone ever asked what really changed my life, I wouldn't say the billionaire father's job offer, not the higher salary, not the new title, not even that first kiss in the warehouse. It was the moment my old apartment door opened in the rain, and a full-figured, exhausted, still proud woman looked at me and asked, "Could we stay here tonight?" Because from that question, everything began. Not just one night of shelter, but the first time in years someone stepped into my life and made this small, cramped room stop being only a place to sleep, eat, and wait for next month's bills. It became a place where someone wanted to stay.